Hey everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. My parents promised to pay for my college but spent the college fund on a vacation home instead. So I ran away from home and went no contact until I heard this news from my dad. I, a 28-year-old male, ran away from home when I was 18 because my parents were jerks who promised to help me with my college tuition. But at the very last minute, they backed out and told me that they couldn't help me out, leaving me with no other option than to rely on someone else for the money. Let me make it clear, I was not entitled enough to believe that they owed it to me or anything, but I had been told by my parents categorically that they would pay my college tuition for me when the time came. My parents were well off. My dad had his own business, which was quite successful, and my mother was a moderately successful real estate agent. So I had a relatively comfortable childhood, and everything was taken care of. I never had to worry about money, and I am thankful for it. I went to private school my entire life and never had to work a day until I turned 18. The reason for that was that my parents always reassured me that they would pay for everything and I would be taken care of. So I never thought that I would ever need to worry about how I was going to pay for college because my parents always told me that they were going to handle it all. Naturally, I never felt the need to go out and look for a job or anything because I assumed that it would be taken care of. I trusted my parents and knew that they would handle it. I also didn't have any reason not to trust them or to question them because they always gave me whatever I asked for, and I had a great relationship with them. So there was no reason for me to doubt them. I would not say that I was spoiled, but I was always taken care of, that was for sure. I never had any extraordinary demands either, so I was pretty easy to handle as a kid. But around the time of my 18th birthday, I started noticing that my dad was really getting worried about work and would spend way too much time in his office, which was not something he used to do before. He seemed to be constantly stressed out, and I never knew why. I asked my mother several times if he was all right because he didn't seem so, and my mother kept telling me that he was fine, even though his behavior said otherwise. This went on for a few months, and I just assumed that it might be something work-related that he wasn't willing to talk about. But I didn't let it affect me because I had my finals coming up, and I was too busy studying and cramming last minute to care about anything else. After my finals were over, it was time for me to celebrate my 18th birthday. I was having a relatively stress-free week until the day of my birthday. On the morning of my birthday, my parents came to my room and wished me well, but instead of leaving, they told me to get dressed and come downstairs for an emergency family meeting in the living room. They looked pretty grim, and that should have been my signal to understand that something was very wrong, but I still had no idea what was about to come. I got dressed quickly and headed downstairs. Once we were all seated, my father started telling me that he had kept a secret from me for quite a few months, but he thought it was the right time to tell me the truth now. My mother could barely look me in the eye, and my dad also seemed pretty fidgety. He told me that the business had been struggling for the past couple of months, which is why he had been working extra hard to make ends meet and to be able to pay all of his employees. But it had been a struggle. He told me that he himself had to take several salary cuts just so he could still continue to pay his employees, and my mother was the one handling all the household expenditures for the past few months, which was difficult because our lifestyle was quite expensive, and my mother did not make enough, at least not as much as my dad. But things were back on track now, and his business was finally doing well again, so they were going to recover the losses soon enough. I thought that was what the meeting was about, that they would just include me and tell me about it. But there was more to it, and that's what they wanted to talk to me about. They told me that now, since they were going to have to be a little more careful with money, they could not afford to send me to college on their dime anymore. I was shocked because I thought they told me that the business was doing well again, so there was no reason they couldn't afford to send me to college and pay for it. But they told me that apparently the losses in the business were not all they had. They had also apparently spent my college fund on a holiday home in Cabo a couple of months ago, right before my dad's business started suffering. They could have sold the holiday home. My parents did not sell the holiday home because they felt attached to it and continued to spend money from their own pocket instead of just doing the sensible thing and selling a few of their unnecessary assets. This is what led them to realize that they could not send me to college not without their finances taking a huge hit. That was it. My world turned upside down that day, and I remember just losing my absolute mind when my parents told me that they would not be able to live up to the promises that they had been making to me for the past few years. I wasn't mad at them because my dad's business was doing badly. That would be pretty shallow of me. But I was mad that they didn't think it was important to tell me about it so I could at least get a job or something and try to earn some money of my own so I wouldn't have to depend entirely on them for my college tuition. I know that it wouldn't be much. I wouldn't be able to make much money by working for a few months before I was supposed to start college, but at least it would be something. I was also very upset that they had chosen to keep the holiday home and everything else instead of just selling off a few things like normal people. It was pretty materialistic of them to prioritize that instead of my education. I think I yelled at them about it for a long time, and their only defense was that they were very attached to these things and they held a lot of sentimental value to them. That was a lot of BS because how can that ever be more important than sending me to college, especially when they had promised me so many times that they would take care of it all. I was really disappointed, and I didn't bother to hide it either. They had really hurt my feelings by lying to me and hiding things from me, especially when these were things that I deserved to know. More than deserved, I needed to know it because otherwise it would only create trouble for me in the future. And it did. We got into a very bad fight that day. My parents accused me of only caring about money and being an entitled and ungrateful brat. But I don't think that was right because I was only asking for what had been promised to me. I didn't think that they had to pay for my college tuition, but after they had promised me for years that they would, I think it was fair for me to be mad. Even if they had told me about it a couple of months before they did, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But they told me just a few weeks before I was supposed to start, and it left me with nowhere to go, and I was a total mess. A lot of things were said, and the fight ended with me going back up to my room and crying until it was dark. It was my birthday, but I didn't even want to talk to anybody, so I turned my phone off and tried not to think about my bleak future. I could get a student loan, but even that would require my parents to sign off on it, and given their financial condition at the time, it would take them a while to recover from the losses they had faced in the past few months. I don't think they were ready to take on a loan at that point in time, otherwise they would have suggested it themselves. So I didn't know what to do, and I just kept crying in my bed because I was so upset. What made me feel worse was the fact that my parents didn't even bother to come up and check on me as if they didn't even care about me. That really hurt my feelings, and towards the evening I started feeling upset and angry instead of just sad. In the heat of the moment, I decided that I was going to teach my parents a lesson and started packing my clothes and stuff so I could run away from home. At the time, I was not aware that this would turn into a permanent thing, and in no way would I have ever been able to predict my future in 1,000 years when I was 18. I guess I was being a bit of a brat at that time because I just wanted to get back at my parents and get them all worried about me. So I sneaked out of my room and out through the kitchen door, carefully enough not to alert anybody in the house that I was leaving. I was quiet enough and was able to leave without much noise, and nobody noticed that I was gone. From there I took a cab to the nearest bus station and took a bus to a city that was a few hundred miles away. I didn't have any particular reason for picking that city. It was just the first city that came to mind. At that point I knew that I had no place to go and no money to support myself, but I didn't want to go back to my parents because I was still mad at them. I also didn't want to call my friends for help because I was afraid they would think I was crazy. I just didn't know what to do. So I decided to stay at a cheap motel for the first few nights and figure out my next step. I knew that staying in a motel wasn't going to be a long-term solution, but it was all I could think of at that moment. I was too proud to go back to my parents, and I was ashamed to ask anybody for help. I didn't have much money left because I had used most of it on the bus fare and the motel. While I was there, I reached out to a few friends and family members, but I was too embarrassed to ask for help. I didn't want to admit that I was in trouble, and I didn't want to come across as a victim. So I just kept it to myself and focused on finding a job so that I could start making some money and figure out what to do next. I applied for several jobs in the area, but it took me a few weeks to get a response. Eventually, I found a job working at a local diner, and it wasn't much, but it was enough to cover my basic expenses and give me a little bit of stability. After a few months I managed to save up enough money to move into a small apartment. It was a modest place, but it was mine, and I was proud of myself for making it on my own. I also started working on furthering my education through online courses and community college classes, trying to make up for the lost time and build a better future for myself. My girlfriend, whom I had met while working at the diner, was incredibly supportive throughout this time. She was understanding and helped me through the tough periods, and we grew close. I eventually moved in with her and her family, who were very kind and supportive. They helped me find a job, and I slowly started rebuilding my life. While I stayed with my girlfriend's family, I did eventually try to reach out to my parents a few times. I was still mad at them, but I just wanted to make sure that they were okay and to let them know that I was safe. My parents, however, did not respond to my texts and calls, and I did not get any reply from them even after I tried reaching out multiple times over the next few months. I figured they were probably mad at me and did not want to talk to me at that time, which is why I decided to give them space. I also figured that they would get in touch with me once they were ready to talk to me, so I waited. But they never did, and my calls and texts remained unanswered. Eventually, I decided that if they did not want to be a part of my life anymore, that was okay. I had made a life for myself. So I just let go of the hope that they would ever reach out to me, and I never tried to get in touch with them again. It hurt to think about it sometimes, but I learned to accept it and live with it. I focused on my own life. We are now married and have our own kids, and I am happy with the life I have made for myself. Update: last week, my father reached out to me. He called me and told me that my mother was very sick and that she did not have much time left. He told me that he had missed me a lot over the years and that he had realized that he should have tried harder to reach out to me. He said that it was never his intention to hurt me, and he wanted to make amends before my mother passed away. I was shocked to hear this because I never thought I would hear from them again. I had made peace with the fact that they were no longer in my life. I'm conflicted about whether I should reach out to them and try to mend things before it's too late. On one hand, I feel like I should forgive them and let go of the past to be there for them in their time of need. On the other hand, I'm still hurt by how they treated me and how they never tried to make things right. I'm not sure if I should put my own feelings aside and be there for them, or if I should stick to my decision of leaving them in the past. What do you think I should do? Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.